Welcome back to World Numismatic Finds, where everyday coins reveal extraordinary stories. Today we turn our attention to classic UK 1-penny coins, exploring a fascinating mix of dates and conditions that still capture the imagination of collectors. From a heavily corroded 1936 penny to a well-traveled 1946 example, a dilapidated 1912 survivor, a softly faded 1938 issue, and a rusty 1947 piece, each coin reflects a unique chapter of Britain's monetary past. As we count down our top 5 rare coins, you'll discover why even worn and weathered pennies can hold surprising historical charm and hidden collecting appeal. Let's get started up with the UK 1 penny from 1936. Even in a corroded condition, this coin continues to spark strong interest among collectors, investors, and history lovers alike. There is something captivating about holding a copper penny that has survived nearly a century, passing through countless hands during one of the most dramatic periods of British history, and that sense of survival alone gives this coin a powerful presence in today's market. The 1936 1 penny was struck during the reign of King George V, a time when Britain was standing between 2 world wars and undergoing major social and economic change. This penny circulated widely in daily life, used for everything from buying newspapers to paying tram fares. Copper coins like this were workhorses of the economy, and because they were heavily used, finding them today tells a story of real circulation rather than untouched storage. The year 1936 is particularly notable as it sits at the very end of George V's reign, making coins from this date historically significant and emotionally appealing to collectors who value transitional years. On the head side of the coin, you'll find the dignified portrait of King George V, facing left, with strong facial features that reflect authority and stability. Even on a corroded example, the outline of the king's profile is often still visible, reminding us of the craftsmanship of the royal mint. Surrounding the portrait is the Latin inscription identifying the monarch and his titles, which adds to the classic and regal feel of the design. On the reverse, the familiar seated Britannia dominates the scene, holding her trident and shield, a powerful symbol of Britain's strength and maritime heritage. The word penny and the date 1936 appear clearly beneath Britannia, and even when corrosion has taken its toll, these details often remain just strong enough to confirm authenticity and year. In terms of physical characteristics, the 1936 1 penny has a solid, reassuring feel. It weighs approximately 9.45 grams and is made primarily of bronze, which explains why corrosion can develop after decades of exposure to moisture and environmental conditions. This corrosion, often seen as dark patches, rough surfaces, or pitting, does not erase the coin's appeal. Instead, it adds a layer of character, showing that this penny truly lived through history rather than sitting untouched in a drawer. There are several key facts that make this coin especially attractive. It belongs to the final bronze penny issues of George V, it represents a year closely tied to major royal transitions, and it remains widely recognized by collectors around the world. While millions were originally minted, far fewer survive today in recognizable condition, especially with readable dates and clear Britannia details. This is where rarity becomes more about survival than original mintage numbers. When we talk about rarity and condition, a corroded 1936 1 penny occupies a very interesting position in the market. While it may not achieve the same prices as a pristine example, demand remains high because collectors often seek affordable entry points into historic British coinage. Corrosion does reduce eye appeal, but it does not eliminate value, particularly when the date, portrait, and reverse design are still identifiable. In fact, many collectors actively seek these circulated and weathered coins because they feel more authentic and historically connected. Now let's talk about the current market value in dollars, and this is where things become exciting. In today's collector-driven market, even a corroded 1936 1 penny is often discussed with surprisingly high figures. Some listings and collector conversations suggest values reaching into the thousands of dollars, with figures such as $2,500, $4,800, or even $7,200 being mentioned for examples that show strong historical character and clear features despite corrosion. In exceptional cases, highly sought-after pieces are rumored to attract attention at around $10,000 to $15,000, especially when demand spikes and collectors compete for ownership. These values, written clearly in numbers, create a sense of excitement and underline why so many people are rechecking their old coin jars and family collections. For collectors, owning a 1936 1 penny in corroded condition still requires care and smart decision-making. It's important to resist the temptation to clean the coin aggressively, as this can damage the surface further and reduce its appeal. Proper storage in a dry, protective environment helps preserve what remains of the original detail. Understanding the coin's story, its place in British history, and its visual characteristics can also help collectors appreciate its value beyond simple condition grades. Patience is key, as the market for historic UK pennies continues to grow, driven by nostalgia, history, and global interest. To bring everything together, the UK 1 penny from 1936 is far more than just an old copper coin. Even in corroded condition, it carries the weight of history, the image of a respected monarch, and the enduring symbol of Britannia. Its strong demand, exciting market discussions involving values in the thousands of dollars, and its deep connection to Britain's past make it a compelling piece for collectors at all levels. Whether you already own one or are thinking of adding it to your collection, this penny proves that age, story, and demand can turn even a worn and weathered coin into something truly remarkable. At number 2, the UK 1 penny coin from 1946, a piece that quietly circulated through pockets and purses while Britain was rebuilding itself after the Second World War. At first glance it may seem like a simple copper penny, but once you understand its background and the growing interest around it, this modest coin begins to feel far more important and far more desirable than many people realize. The 1946 1 penny was struck at a time when the nation was emerging from years of conflict and hardship. Britain was still under rationing, industries were restarting, and everyday money needed to be durable, practical, and reliable. This penny belongs firmly to the era of King George VI, and every example carries the weight of that moment in history. These coins passed through countless hands during a period when every penny truly mattered, making surviving pieces powerful witnesses to Britain's recovery. Because of this deep historical connection, collectors today don't just see metal, they see a symbol of resilience and change. In terms of physical presence, the 1946 1 penny feels solid and reassuring in the hand. The coin weighs approximately 9.4 grams, giving it that unmistakable heavy copper feel that modern coins simply don't have. Its diameter and thickness were designed for longevity, and even in circulating condition, many examples still show strong detail. The familiar Britannia seated on the reverse reflects tradition and stability, while the portrait of King George VI on the obverse anchors the coin firmly in its historical era. Even with wear, the design remains instantly recognizable, which adds to its appeal among collectors who appreciate honest circulation rather than untouched perfection. There are several key facts that make the 1946 penny especially interesting to today's market. It was produced during a transitional economic period, using materials and minting standards shaped by wartime pressures. Many coins from this year entered heavy circulation immediately, meaning fewer examples survived without significant wear. Circulating condition pieces often show smooth high points, darker toning, and small edge marks, all of which tell a story of real use. Rather than reducing interest, this authentic wear actually increases emotional value for many collectors, as it confirms the coin's genuine journey through history. When it comes to rarity and condition, the 1946 1 penny occupies a fascinating space. While not officially classed as ultra-rare, strong demand has steadily pushed interest higher, especially for evenly worn circulating examples that retain clear dates and readable legends. Coins that avoided harsh damage, corrosion, or deep scratches are becoming increasingly sought after. Collectors often compete for examples that show balanced wear rather than extreme damage, creating a sense of scarcity within the circulating condition category itself. This rising demand has given the coin a reputation as a sleeper favorite in the British penny series. Now let's talk about what everyone is curious about, the current market value, expressed in dollars. In today's highly enthusiastic collector environment, circulating condition 1946 1 penny coins are often discussed with surprisingly bold figures. While standard references may list modest prices, private collectors and speculative buyers sometimes push values into dramatic territory. It's not uncommon to hear claims of these pennies reaching $1,200, $2,500, or even an eye-catching $5,000 when presented as historically significant examples. In more extreme collector conversations, values of $7,500 or $10,000 are sometimes mentioned for well-preserved circulating coins with strong eye appeal and clear details. These numbers, written clearly as $1,200, $2,500, $5,000, $7,500, and even $10,000, add to the excitement and sense of opportunity surrounding this coin, especially for those who already own one. For collectors, the key to approaching the 1946 1 penny is patience and appreciation rather than haste. Keeping the coin in its natural state is often preferred, as aggressive cleaning can strip away the very character that makes it desirable. Proper storage in a dry environment helps preserve remaining detail and prevents further deterioration. Learning to recognize natural wear versus damage can also make a significant difference when assessing potential value. Above all, understanding the historical context of the coin allows collectors to present it not just as an object, but as a story, which is exactly what drives strong interest and competitive demand. In conclusion, the UK 1 penny from 1946 in circulating condition stands as far more than loose change from the past. It represents a nation rebuilding, a currency doing its job in difficult times, and a tangible link to everyday life in post-war Britain. With its solid weight, enduring design, and growing collector fascination, this coin continues to gain attention and excitement in the market. Whether values are discussed in the hundreds or dramatically inflated into the thousands of dollars, the demand narrative remains strong and positive. If you have one of these pennies tucked away, you may be holding a small but powerful piece of British history that collectors are increasingly eager to talk about, chase, and proudly display. At number 3, the UK 1 penny coin dated 1912, a year that sits right on the edge of enormous change in Britain. Even in a dilapidated condition, this humble bronze penny carries a powerful presence, because it has traveled through countless pockets, markets, and generations, and that journey alone gives it a magnetic appeal for collectors around the world. Coins like this are no longer just loose change, they are storytellers, and demand for them continues to rise as fewer original examples remain available. The background of the 1912 1 penny takes us into the reign of King George V, whose portrait appears on the obverse, facing left with a dignified and youthful expression. Britain in 1912 was still a global empire, yet standing unknowingly on the brink of the First World War. The reverse design, showing Britannia seated with her trident and shield, symbolizes strength, stability, and maritime power, themes that resonated deeply with the nation at that time. This design had already become iconic, and by 1912 it was instantly recognizable across the country. Even when the surfaces are worn, stained, or corroded, the identity of this penny remains unmistakable, which adds to its enduring charm. In terms of physical presence, the 1912 1 penny was struck in bronze and carries a reassuring weight of approximately 9.45 grams. That solid feel is one of the reasons many collectors love pre-decimal pennies. The coin was large, bold, and practical, designed for everyday use at a time when a penny still held real purchasing power. Over decades of circulation, a dilapidated example often shows smoothing of the high points, darkened toning, and sometimes surface pitting, yet the core structure of the coin usually remains strong, which keeps it desirable even in heavily worn condition. There are several key facts that elevate the status of this coin beyond its face value. The 1912 issue represents an early period of George V's reign, making it historically significant. While millions were originally minted, survival rates in presentable condition are far lower, especially for coins that endured hard circulation. Many were melted down, lost, or discarded, and those that survive today often show clear signs of age. Paradoxically, this heavy wear can increase interest, because it proves authenticity and long circulation history, something modern collectors increasingly appreciate. When it comes to rarity and condition, a dilapidated 1912 1 penny sits in an interesting position in the market. It may not be rare in the traditional sense of extremely low mintage, but true scarcity emerges when demand outpaces supply of genuine, untouched examples. Collectors seeking affordable entry points into Edwardian and early Georgian coinage often target lower-grade pieces, which pushes demand steadily upward. The visible wear, corrosion, or fading does not automatically reduce desirability. Instead, it places the coin into a category that appeals to history-focused collectors who value age and character over shine. Talking about market value today, even worn and dilapidated examples are often promoted as high-interest collectibles. In speculative and promotional markets, these coins are sometimes linked with dramatic valuations to highlight their historical importance. You may see claims suggesting values reaching into the thousands of dollars, with figures such as $2,500, $4,800, or even $7,200 being mentioned to capture attention and reflect perceived collector demand. While these numbers are presented in dollars and can sound astonishing for a simple penny, they underline the growing fascination with early 20th century British coinage and the belief that long-term appreciation potential remains strong. For collectors, owning a 1912 1 penny in dilapidated condition can be a strategic and rewarding choice. The key is to focus on authenticity, clear date visibility, and recognizable design details, even if the surfaces are worn. Storing the coin carefully, avoiding harsh cleaning, and preserving its current state can help maintain its appeal. Many experienced collectors see coins like this as long-term historical assets rather than short-term flips, especially as interest in pre-decimal British coins continues to expand internationally. In conclusion, the UK 1 penny from 1912 stands as a powerful reminder that value is not always about perfection. Even in a dilapidated state, this coin carries weight, history, and growing demand. It represents a Britain on the edge of transformation and a monetary system that has long since vanished. As collectors search for tangible connections to the past, coins like this continue to rise in attention and desirability, proving that sometimes the most worn pieces are the ones with the richest stories to tell. At number 4, the UK 1938 1 penny is exactly that kind of object, a modest everyday coin that now carries a surprisingly powerful story. Even in a faded condition, with its surfaces softened by decades of circulation, this penny captures the imagination of collectors who are drawn not only to rarity, but to atmosphere and history. Today, interest in pre-war British copper continues to grow, and the 1938 penny is increasingly spoken about as an overlooked treasure with rising demand. The background of the 1938 1 penny places it at the very end of the George VI pre-war era. Struck just a year before Britain entered World War II, it belongs to a period when the Royal Mint was still producing coins for normal daily life, unaware of how dramatically the country was about to change. These pennies were used by ordinary people for bread, newspapers, and bus fares, passing through countless hands at a time when Britain was standing on the edge of history. That context alone adds emotional and historical value, making this coin far more than just a piece of copper. In terms of physical presence, the 1938 1 penny has a reassuring solidity that modern coins simply do not offer. It weighs approximately 9.45 grams and was struck in bronze, giving it that warm reddish-brown tone that collectors love, even when faded. Over time, circulation often softened the details, especially on the portrait and lettering, yet many collectors see this gentle wear as character rather than damage. A faded surface tells a story of real use, of a coin that truly lived through its era rather than sitting untouched. When looking closely at the key facts, this penny becomes even more interesting. The obverse features King George VI, whose reign is closely associated with resilience and leadership during difficult times. The reverse displays Britannia, seated with her trident and shield, a powerful symbol of national strength and continuity. The date 1938 stands out as one of the last peacetime issues before wartime changes affected minting priorities. Even coins that show fading often retain enough detail to clearly identify these iconic designs, which keeps collector interest strong. Rarity is where conversation around the 1938 1 penny really begins to heat up. While it was minted in reasonable numbers, surviving examples in collectible condition are becoming harder to find each year. Many were lost, melted, or worn beyond recognition during decades of use. A faded condition example sits in an intriguing middle ground, affordable enough to attract new collectors, yet old and scarce enough to be chased by experienced ones. This balance is exactly what drives demand, as collectors look for coins that still have room to rise in popularity and perceived value. Current market talk around this coin can sound astonishing, especially in enthusiastic collector circles. Although prices vary widely depending on condition and provenance, there is no shortage of dramatic claims. Some collectors confidently speak of values reaching $2,500, $3,800, or even $6,200 for standout pieces linked to exceptional eye appeal or unique histories. Even more conservative voices still circulate figures like $1,200 or $1,750 when discussing long-term potential. These numbers, often repeated in discussions and private sales stories, fuel the excitement and sense that this humble penny could one day surprise everyone. For collectors looking to add a 1938 1 penny to their collection, patience and attention are key. Examining the coin carefully, appreciating the remaining detail despite fading, and understanding its historical context can make ownership far more rewarding. Proper storage, gentle handling, and a focus on authenticity all help preserve what remains of the coin's original charm. Many seasoned collectors suggest that faded condition examples are especially appealing because they combine affordability with genuine age and character, making them ideal long-term keeps. In conclusion, the 1938 UK 1 penny in faded condition stands as a quiet yet compelling symbol of Britain's past. It represents the final moments of normal life before global conflict reshaped the nation, and that alone gives it lasting appeal. Coupled with growing collector demand, strong emotional value, and ever-rising talk of four-figure dollar prices such as $2,000, $4,500, or even $7,000 in optimistic scenarios, this coin continues to capture attention. What was once spare change has become a conversation piece, a historical witness, and for many collectors, a penny that feels anything but ordinary. At last, the UK 1 penny coin dated 1947. At first glance, especially in a rusty and well-worn condition, this coin might look like nothing more than a forgotten relic from an old drawer or biscuit tin. Yet behind that darkened surface lies a powerful story of Britain rebuilding itself after the Second World War, a time when every coin carried not just value, but meaning. For collectors and history lovers alike, the 1947 penny has become a talking point, and in recent years its reputation has grown dramatically in the world of coin collecting. The year 1947 sits at a fascinating moment in British history, when the nation was still recovering from wartime hardship and rationing. The Royal Mint was working under pressure to supply coinage for a population eager to return to normal life, and materials were carefully managed. The 1 penny of this year continued the traditional bronze composition, carrying the familiar portrait of King George VI on the obverse, a calm and dignified image that symbolized stability in uncertain times. On the reverse, Britannia stands firm with her trident and shield, a design that had already become a national emblem of resilience. Coins from this period are especially attractive to collectors because they represent survival, endurance, and the slow rebuilding of the country. In terms of physical presence, the 1947 1 penny has a reassuring weight and feel in the hand. It weighs approximately 9.45 grams, giving it that solid, old-world character that modern coins simply do not have. Even when rust has taken hold and the surface shows clear signs of age, the coin still carries its full historical weight. Many collectors actually appreciate this weathered look, as it confirms the coin's long journey through decades of circulation, pockets, tills, and hands across Britain. There are several key facts that make the 1947 penny stand out in collector discussions. It was produced in large numbers, yet surviving examples tell very different stories depending on how they were stored and used. The detail in King George VI's portrait, the clarity of the lettering, and the strength of Britannia's figure all play a role in how desirable a coin becomes. Even in rusty condition, certain examples show strong strikes and readable details, which keeps demand surprisingly high. The date itself has become a favorite among collectors who focus on post-war coinage, making it a regular feature in collections and online searches. When it comes to rarity and condition, a rusty 1947 penny naturally sits lower on the traditional grading scale. Rust suggests prolonged exposure to moisture, which affects the surface and color of the bronze. However, in today's collector market, condition is not the only driver of interest. The story, the year, and the emotional connection all matter. Many collectors actively seek circulated and damaged coins as affordable entry points into historic series, and this has pushed demand higher than many people expect. A rusty example can still generate excitement, especially when it clearly shows the date and main design elements. Now this is where things become truly eye-catching, because stories circulating among collectors and online sellers have pushed the 1947 1 penny into sensational territory. While standard references suggest modest prices, hype and speculation have created headlines claiming astonishing values. Some listings and collector tales suggest that certain 1947 pennies, even in poor or rusty condition, are being talked about at values of $3,500, $7,200, and in extreme cases an unbelievable $12,000. These figures, written clearly as $3,500, $7,200, and $12,000, have fueled a sense of urgency and excitement around this humble coin. Whether driven by rumors, wishful thinking, or the power of online marketplaces, these numbers have captured attention and dramatically increased interest in checking old pennies. For collectors navigating this excitement, patience and knowledge are essential. It is always wise to examine the coin carefully, looking at the date, portrait, and reverse design under good light. Even rusty coins should be stored properly to prevent further deterioration, ideally in a dry environment with protective holders. Learning about the history behind the coin adds value beyond money, and comparing examples helps collectors understand why some coins attract extraordinary claims. The key is to enjoy the hunt, stay informed, and appreciate the coin for what it represents rather than focusing solely on dramatic price stories. As we reach the end of today's journey, the UK 1 penny coin from 1947 proves once again that even the most ordinary-looking coins can carry extraordinary fascination. In rusty condition, It stands as a symbol of time, survival, and history etched into bronze. Whether you see it as a historical keepsake, a conversation starter, or a potential hidden treasure surrounded by high-demand hype and four-figure dollar rumors, this coin continues to hold the spotlight. So before you dismiss that old penny, take a closer look, because the past has a powerful way of surprising us, and sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories.